Good morning. Good morning,
Hey,
guys.
Shannon.
Hey,
I don't
Kat.
know if you're talking to me or talking to them, but it's very good to be here with you.
Thank you. I'm sitting here today with Kevin Billett, author of Light in the Heart of Darkness, which before we went live, I was looking at the beautiful cover of this book, and it's so rich and inviting. And we were discussing kind of the aesthetic behind it. Do you care to share what you shared with me?
Oh, sure, Shannon. Yeah, I mean, the book was written from my experience of healing from 30 years of cyclical depression. And the big revelation, when I finally let go of the pattern, when I healed from it, the big revelation was that the light that I'd been looking for in my life was actually in the heart of the darkness. It was an innate part of darkness. So when I let go, when I surrendered completely, light was the nature of darkness. It wasn't like I had to go through a tunnel to get to the light at the end of the tunnel. It was implicit. And I wanted the cover of the book to kind of evoke that there is light in darkness. If we stop fighting the darkness, if we stop resisting, if we let go completely, that light is the innate nature. So I'm hoping that at least some of that came across.
It's beautiful. It really is. And the cover really speaks to me, and it makes me want to dive in and see what this message is about. And that's why we're here today. So I think we titled your talk, How to Stop Being Sad. Is that?
Yes, S.A.D. It's a known acronym for stress, anxiety, depression. And for sure, that's been a big focus of my life because since childhood, I'd gone through cycles of depression, intermingled with periods of stress, definitely anxiety, background anxiety, or sometimes overwhelming anxiety. And I'd tried everything to let go of it, to heal from it, to strengthen myself up and focus positively and move on. And nothing worked. I could get temporary relief, but nothing fundamentally changed the baggage that I was carrying through life until. Sorry, go on. Yeah,
No,
ask.
yes.
ask.
I'd like to go back to when you say you've struggled with depression since childhood.
Yeah.
How, depression and anxiety, stress, always relative topics, but especially right now.
No.
Depression is something, I've seen in those I know and love and are dear to me, the monotony of lockdowns or different levels of lockdown.
Yeah.
And how depression as a child, how was that identified? Can we start there?
When was it clinically identified? It wasn't clinically identified until I was 16 years of age, but it had been with me since I was 8. It became very clear to me in writing the book that the origin of depression with me was a trauma that had happened when, as an 8-year-old, I'd been entrusted with my little sister who was 10 months old. And we had an accident when she was in a buggy, and I thought that I'd killed her. The buggy got out of control. I thought she was dead. And the intensity of emotions that came out of that were just too much to handle. The grief that I thought I'd killed her, the shame that I was a murderer, the intense, embarrassment, humiliation, all sorts went kind of kicking off inside me, and I had no mechanism to handle it. No one I could tell about because it was such a secret. And so I shut it. And that's that type of shutdown where I just suppressed these big emotions was the forerunner of depression, because you can't shut your emotions down selectively. We like to think we can, but it's not a human possibility. If we shut down, we shut down. And then, over time, it took more and more shutdown to hold the emotions in place, and then sleepwalking through life, kind of low-level depression and getting worse through the years.
Yeah, and at 8 years old, oh my gosh, just a child.
Yeah,
And
yeah,
so how you didn't have the tools, you didn't have the knowledge.
no tool.
My first instinct as a mom is how do I protect my children? How do I make sure that traumatic things happen, accidents happen,
Yeah.
incidents happen? How do we create resiliency? How do we not go into that hole?
Yeah, it's a very different consciousness today than it was when I was a child, Shannon. In those days, my parents were more focused on their own careers, their own survival. and on making sure that I obeyed the rules. So there was little attention to what is actually taking place with our children. But these days, I mean, if I work with people with children, I'm definitely encouraging them to be empathetic, to be tuned, and to notice when there's upset, because there's almost always a cause for that upset. And to encourage children to stay open with their emotions so they allow a natural emotional flow to take place. You know, in the bad old days, we were so taught to shut it down. You don't cry, you don't get angry, you don't get upset. You just put on a stoic face and pretend that that's normal, but pretend that's reality. And it's not healthy to do that. It really messes with us when we try to control our emotions, when we try to manage them or guide them on particular lines, turn them into something else. It's a risky strategy that can tie us up in knots internally and can cause us, I mean, big pain as life goes on.
Yeah. So let's keep going on this life journey. You know, teenage years. What did this look like?
Well, for me, I mean, I was shutting down big emotions. You know, with the accident, I was being very silly, very playful, being out of control. And so I learned that I had to be in control. I had to be in control of my body, my emotions, my circumstances, everything. And so I turned from a very kind of happy-go-lucky, joyous little kid into a serious mini-adult at the age of 8 to 9 years of age. And of course, that chips away at you over time. You know, if you're serious, if you have to be or pretend to be a grown-up, then there's a weight to that. And so that was what I noticed as time went on, the weight of responsibility, the weight of seriousness, and trying to break free, trying to get out of it. But really, I mean, nothing that I tried for the next very nearly 30 years, nothing fundamentally worked.
And what did you try?
Oh, God. Well, first of all was sport. I mean, what I found was sport gave me temporary relief, you know. So if I was competitive, and I used to play football in Wales, where I grew up. I used to play rugby, which is slightly similar to your American football. I swam competitively. I ran. I cycled. I mean, anything to kind of, you know, break out of the physical pattern of containment. And of course, that had temporary results. It would lift my mood temporarily, but then eventually back down to the stasis of the weight of responsibility and the sinking into some sense of overwhelm of life. So sport, education, reading, I mean, reading anything. And as I got older, definitely personal growth work. I thought, okay, here's my salvation. You know, all this positive thinking, it's got to work for me. And so from the 1980s onwards, studied with audio tapes, studied with live teachers, did all sorts of 80s and 90s personal growth work and got temporary results out of it. I mean, it would lift my mood for maybe 1 month, 2 months, 3 months, but then crashing back down to the old overwhelm, hopelessness, the kind of just forlorn brokenness of life. And I've lost you. I'm going to still keep talking here, Shannon. You've disappeared. I'm trusting that I'm still talking to an audience here. And then later on with spiritual inquiry. So spiritual inquiry, spiritual reading. I read from various religious tracts, from spiritual tracts, and try to find some practice that would give me a way out of the pattern that I was locked into. And whatever I did, I would say the best of them gave temporary results. The worst of them actually made it worse. So for instance, working, becoming a workaholic to try and create the lifestyle that would make me happy. So working all the hours under the sun in order to produce the wealth, to produce the lifestyle that, you know, held the promise of getting me healthy and whole. But I mean, that was counterproductive. I just burned myself out doing that and definitely fell into more stress, more anxiety, and it didn't help with the depression. So this type of pattern went on for me, with me trying basically everything that I could find, everything that I could learn about to try and break out of the pattern predominantly of depression, and nothing at all worked. Nothing worked until I was in my late 30s and had attended a seminar in London. And a friend came up to me and said, And he knew by this time I was jacked up to the eyeballs on medication for depression, and he knew I was in a bad way. And he said, "I've booked you a therapy session." And I said, "Okay, what is it?" And he said, "I don't know what it is, but you're going for it." And I said, "Okay." And I have no enthusiasm here. I had no belief that anything was going to help me at this stage. And I turned up for a session without knowing what it was. And it was actually right at the early beginnings of journey work with Brandon Bays.
Right, which we'll get into.
Yeah, we'll talk a little bit about this. Yeah. And so I attended this session, and for the first time, someone said to me, "What are you feeling?" And I named it, and they said, "Great, just feel that." Now, I mean, this was a bit mind-bending to me for a start, because everyone up until that point, the psychiatrists, the psychologists, the personal growth people, had always said, "Oh, let's fix what you're feeling. Let's change that to something better." So for the first time in my life, I'm hearing this message that says, "Just feel what's here." And I went, "Okay, that's novel, that's new." And then this invitation to feel it fully, just to welcome it, to stop fighting it, to stop telling the story about the emotion, but actually to allow it fully to be felt in the body. So to allow the biochemical shift that emotions bring with them. And then sequentially, the invitation to just sink in deeper, just go deeper than that. And then a different emotion would show up and something deeper would reveal itself. And it got intense from time to time, At one point, I hit fear that felt that it was going to shake my body loose and pull it apart. And still great, just feel the fear. Like this was rewiring my brain. Just hearing the questions was rewiring my brain here, because I had a lifetime of avoiding this stuff. And then I came to a level of anger and rage, and same thing. Great, just feel it. And I'm sure my face must have turned beet red, and I must have looked like I was going to explode. But sure enough, in letting go into it without resisting it or telling a story, it deepened and became, down into realms that I was relatively familiar with. The worthlessness, hopelessness, overwhelm stuff that I'd wrestled with depression. But still, in each case, okay, great. So just feel that. Wow, this is like totally alien to me. And then eventually, in surrendering to abject hopelessness, complete overwhelm, I fell into a space of darkness. And this was the darkness that I've written about in the book here. It was familiar in terms of depression, that there was darkness that I wanted to get out of. But this time there was an invitation just to let go into the darkness. And eventually, through a feeling that I was going to disappear, a fear that I was going to die, in the heart of darkness came this champagne light. That's what's on the cover of the book. It was like something effervesced from deep inside. I couldn't even say it was from in me. But in letting go completely, in surrendering to the worst, in surrendering beyond the fears, this light revealed itself. And at this point, I think I must have been a sobbing wreck, because what I got was that everything that I'd been looking for was right here. I'd been looking on the outside all my life. I'd been struggling to reach for wholeness. I'd been struggling to attain something that would make me okay. And I discovered that wholeness, that completeness, that consciousness all inside. And to say it was a realization would be pure understatement. There's some work was done within this frame, some healing work, some forgiveness work, and I came out of a session. The truth was, I was so blown away I could barely say thank you. And when I checked mentally and I checked physically, it was as if someone had stolen my ability to be depressed from me. It was as if someone had taken it away. I couldn't reference it. I couldn't find it in my body. And came off the medication, pretty quickly after that. And, they say your brain function, I was told at one point, well, you've got chemical depression. In letting go emotionally like this, in being guided like this, my brain knew exactly what to do to restore its balanced chemistry. And I fell into a place of wholeness and gratitude and a place of living life to the fullest that I've enjoyed every single day since that time.
So,
Strong emotion comes and goes, but depression, it's just not an option.
so what did it feel like when that finally lifted?
It was shocking, Shannon, is the honest way to describe it. I kept checking to find out, okay, what if this happened? What if that happened? And it felt like I discovered the true essence of myself, and that no circumstance could touch that. That it didn't matter what arose in life, what the circumstances were, what the comings and goings of life were, that I, the essence of me, was essentially untouched, unaffected. And I was aware that in this path of consciousness, that strong emotions were arising, but they weren't sticking anywhere. They weren't clinging to anything. There was no fight in me, nothing in me that wanted to resolve them or resist them or change them into something else. And so it is emotional. It's a raw way to experience life, but it's an extraordinary way to experience life.
I really, when you were speaking, I cut out for a few minutes. I had a little my internet went down. I'm glad you stayed.
I assumed that someone was still listening, and I kept talking.
No, it's great. But when I came back in and I heard you talking about, just feel it. Okay, anger, just feel it. Fear, just feel it. And someone else gave you permission to stay there as long as you needed to. And then you began giving yourself permission to feel. And that's what I hear you're still doing is, and so, I have not read the book Light in the Heart of Darkness, but I'm going to assume that this is in the book is a way to.
There's a fuller version of that in there, Shannon. Yes, I mean, there's some background. There's a lot of my experience over the last 26 years now of helping people to free themselves from depression. And yes, that story is definitely in there. And the techniques are recorded onto audio files so that people can download those. The book is available free on my webpage, kevinbillett.org. You can download a free version of the ebook there and access free the work, the process work. Here's the thing, right? You can understand this conceptually. You can say, okay, there have been books out there, like I'm thinking back to Feel the Fear and Do It Anyway. It's a great instruction. It's a beautiful book, but it doesn't really tell you how to do that. And you can understand that conceptually, but you have to go there to feel the fear and to let go into that, to let fear do whatever it's going to do to the body before it passes, in order for the real lesson to be learned. It's a visceral lesson. It's not a mental lesson. Here with stress, anxiety, depression, they've similar root causes, different resistances, different styles of emotional management that manifest these ways, but the antidote essentially is the same. And it's an exercise. It's like you've got to dive in to find this out for yourself. You can't academically learn it and get the results from it.
You have to feel it in the body and experience.
You really do have to feel it, yeah. That was the biggest revelation of my life, I think, Shannon. Someone saying to me, emotions can be your friend if you let go into them. There is freedom in the heart of any emotion, no matter how intense that is. Because I've been brought up to think, there are good emotions and bad emotions. And if you go to the bad ones, well, you're going to end up messed up. You'll end up depressed. That's why you get depressed, because you go to those emotions. And it's the opposite of what is true. It's our wrangling with emotion, our wanting emotions to be different than they are, that causes the problem. And there's a beautiful leverage in that if we're willing to open from time to time with what we would have labeled as negative, the negative shows up less and less in life. And the undercurrent of emotionality that we discover is more and more positive, so naturally positive, not forced, not kind of hippie trippy wishful thinking, but authentically like a positive upwelling from the depth of being.
Yeah,
it's well worth it.
So what Sorry. Can you hear that background?
I can hear someone talking in the background, yes.
Yeah, sorry. We're in a new studio setup since I've last gone live, so still adjusting.
Right.
Now, I'd like to give our viewers something tangible, something, maybe that they can, if they're struggling with depression or anxiety or stress, like we all are, maybe something simple, something. Can you share a takeaway that we can give to our viewers?
Well, the biggest takeaway, obviously, would be to download the book and to do the exercises in that. A takeaway from here is this. Let me speak to what depression is not to start with, because there is, from the orthodox medical field, a lot of assumptions and a lot of theories. Depression in itself is not a mental illness. There is zero clinical evidence that depression is a mental illness. Now, it can cause mental illness, but that means mental illness is a symptom of depression. It doesn't define depression, and it doesn't cause depression. It's the other way around. It's not a physical disease. It's possible that depression can cause physical diseases because it's capable of shutting down certain operations of the body, for sure. But it's not what it is. Again, this is confusing cause or definition with symptomology.
Right.
So it's neither of those things. And it's not a genetic inevitability, as I was told when I was growing up. I've seen people from all walks of life with varying degrees of depression really wake up to what was causing it and to clear that out. The first thing that I would say to people is it's okay to feel what you're feeling. And the moment you stop resisting any pure emotion, and by stopping resisting, I mean you stop physically, you open, you allow the emotion to come without telling a story about that emotion. You just allow it to be present. This will naturally flow and take you deeper and take you deeper until eventually, if you stay with it, it will open you into pure presence. Now, that can be an intense experience, but it is well worth the intensity. So recognize what depression is. It's a pattern born from wrangling with your emotions, trying to keep things under wraps, trying to manipulate emotionally to achieve strained results, let's say. If we stop telling ourselves stories, stop the manipulation, and are willing to be present to what's felt, open with it, allow it to flow until it completes, that will lead us into a beautiful, open state that is full of peace, is a realization of love, is a realization that who and what you are, the essence of you, is not touched by emotion or by circumstances of life.
And that no emotion will rip you apart or cause you to die. Like you said, you had this fear, of feeling them, that you would physically disintegrate. And yeah,
this is the way I was conditioned from childhood, and a lot of us are, because our parents have been afraid of certain emotions. They pass that on to us, and we take it for granted. We don't stop and actually directly experience it. We work with a false assumption that emotions own us, that they control us, and that if you really let go, it's going to be damaging. And the absolute opposite is true.
Now, some emotions are enjoyable, many are not. What is your take on good, bad emotions, higher vibration, lower vibration? Do they serve a different purpose?
Yeah, okay, look, that's a tricky question here. Here's my take on it, okay, and I'll just be bold. There's no such thing as a bad emotion or a good emotion. There are pleasurable emotions and those that scare us or those that are not pleasurable. Are there good or bad emotions? No, there aren't. Now, certain emotions, if we add a story to them, if we don't want to feel them, can turn into behaviors. Behaviors are very different things. So let's take, for example, rage, okay? If I'm triggered into rage for a long time now, I'm very happy just to go, whoa, okay, Billett, here you go. You're triggered in rage. probably sometime soon, you need to go and sit down, kind of internally wind the cameras back to what was done or what was said and feel the rage. And I literally will do that. And then if you stand or sit and go, okay, and I'll replay the words just to kick myself off, and then I'll drop the story. I'll just feel the emotion. Rage will come fully. And it will come normally from your groin area right up through your body, and your face will turn red, and it'll feel like your body is going to explode. But the more you open with it, the more you realize its true nature is pure energy. It's Shakti, Chi, life force. And when you stop resisting it, it becomes this pure animating force in a very healthy way. Now, alternatively, we could
I have a question about the rage. So when you feel it and your face gets red and you have this energy and this aggression, what do you do? How do you expel the energy?
I don't. There's the thing, because that becomes cathartic, and catharsis can have a temporary benefit, but it's not what I'm talking about here. So what I would do is just to open with it and open with it and open more with it. To say yes to it, to allow it. And then it turns into something else. Something else is revealed to be its nature in the way that I described. So it turns into something that is not aggressive, that is pure energy. And that's just by letting go. I mean, sometimes if I'm sitting, I'll grip the side of the chair, just to kind of anchor myself. But the essence of it is that in any emotion, the core of any emotion, is some pure energy that will open you into a state of realization, into a state of. Now, to go back to the point that I was going to make there, if we resist rage, so rage is triggered, it kicks off in us, and we want to do something with it, then one of the things we can do is to blame other people, to get aggressive and to lash out, so to project from the rage. That definitely, in my frame of reality, negative. That behavior is hurtful, potentially harmful to other people. I definitely do not subscribe to that. But if you're willing just to withdraw, to sit or stand and feel any emotion, including rage, including the ones that we've labeled negatively, we'll find that there's no negativity about them. It's just an energetic shift in the body. It's a biochemical change in the body. It has no meaning unless we add a meaning to it. And the more surrendered we can be to it, the more it gives a chance for life to show up organically with the positives. It's like a leveraged deal.
So, if that's how we treat rage or fear, anger, or any of these less desirable emotions, I feel that we're being invited to treat the positive emotions the same way. And so when we feel, joy or contentment or gratitude, is this the same approach? Stay with it, feel it, body in it. I
think it's our natural propensity to stay with the things that we enjoy. So just enjoy it while it's here, let it flow. The difficulty we've got on that end of the spectrum, if you like, is that we try to cling to those states, we try to cling to those emotions, and then we're creating a pastiche. We're not really in the real deal. We're experiencing some manufactured version of it. And there are people who go through life like this. I'm happy, happy, happy all the time. And I hear that and go, some of the time I buy, all the time, not so much. There's some story of elevation taking place internally. There's some wishful thinking taking place. There's probably some avoidance taking place, because all humans experience a gamut of emotions, and we can't healthily control them. We can't keep them up all the time. And if we are willing to let go into them and to feel them, they won't stay down for very long.
So I interviewed your wife, I think a few months ago, and I'd love to talk about that connection. So both Kevin and his wife, Brandon Bays, are joining us as guides on Guidely, and we're so excited to have you.
We're excited too.
I'd love to hear how your work, how you met, how your work ties together, what you're creating in the world today.
Well, we met because I had been depressed since age 8, and when I was in my late 30s, discovered her work. So it was right at the beginning of Journey Work. And after that experience I described to you of letting go of depression and really kind of waking up to some
So hang
deeper.
on. I know journey work is will you?
Oh, it's the work that she was doing at the time, and then out of that, I was so blown away by the result. When I'd been looking for something all my life, and that was discovered to be inside. When I'd fallen into wholeness, not found it on the outside, I just said to her, "Look, the world needs to find out about this, so let me volunteer to help you." And I organized some events for her. I was running sound at the back of the room with these little groups she had in the mid 1990s, and just volunteered, particularly when she was in Britain, which is where I'm from. And so we became business partners. Then we fell in love, and we got married about what was that? About 3.5, 4 years later.
And Brandon's story is incredible. She healed from a basketball-sized tumor.
Yes.
I mean, the story is mind-blowing, and her presence and the work that she's continued to do in both of you for, several dozen years now is just amazing.
She is an amazing woman. You asked me earlier on, if I had a mentor in life, who would be the one that I would name? And it's my wife. I'm blessed enough to be married to her. We've got a relationship where we challenge each other. We really kind of take each other deeply into the truth of our own direct experience. And then we just allow what grows out of that to grow out of it. So the work has changed and evolved and deepened enormously over the last 25, 26 years. And I love it, absolutely love it. I've seen so many things in people with their healing, with their growth, with their letting go, with turning their lives completely around, that a lot of people would say either impossible or it's miraculous. And I prefer to look at it as some everyday miracle that I'm privileged enough to be witnessing.
So how has your work shifted the last 6-8 months since we've switched to?
It shifted radically. We used to be a live seminar organization where we'd go to different countries on different continents and then present the work to live audiences. Well, all of a sudden in March, that became impossible. So it was a scary couple of weeks where we had to sit and open and let go of our preconceptions about what the journey was and how we could operate and bring everything online. And so it's been a reorganization, and we've been thrilled with the feedback we've gotten with the online deliveries. It's been blow away. People are reporting back that they feel like we're all in the same room. They're getting the same level of support from trainers, and they're getting the same extraordinary results with healing and growth and turning their lives around. So we're breathing a sigh of relief and gratitude at the moment.
So do you mind giving a short, concise summary of what the work is, the journey? I know there's an upcoming workshop, the Journey Intensive, correct?
There is a Journey Intensive coming up on North American time zones very shortly. I think it may be this weekend, actually.
Oh, okay.
So yeah, so the journey is a healing modality that really pulls you deeply into the truth of your own being, so that not the superficial symptoms of what you're experiencing, but the deep root causes of what you are struggling with and suffering from in life can be exposed and worked through and healed. So we come to forgiveness of self and others, and then the body, the being, takes over from there and produces incredible healing, extraordinary healing. So it's a guided experience throughout the weekend of this type of depth of experience and depth of fundamental healing.
So would you say that it's, I can see the parallel paths with your work, the light in the heart of darkness, the depression.
Sure.
How, if someone's struggling with stress, anxiety, depression, the Journey Intensive could also help them?
Oh, sure. Yes, absolutely. That's the work that turned me around completely from depression. So the work in the book is just, it's targeted towards stress, anxiety, depression. The Journey Intensive has a slightly broader base, but it's exactly the same work. All the work that I do is based on the work that is developed out of Brandon's original journey work. So yes, it's the same. The weekend is phenomenal healing for body, for mind, for being.
So we have your interview after this for the platform and for your profile.
Beautiful.
And I have about 10 questions that I like to ask, and I think I'm going to cherry pick a couple to drop in here at the end of our time live.
Okay.
And so humor me and answer them twice, please. But there's two that I really love, and
I may give you different answers.
That's great. That's okay. So I'd love to hear about a time in your life, and maybe since you're, really started your healing journey, but when you fell out of alignment and how you course corrected.
Okay, so there's a memory coming to mind here when I'd done so much work on myself. I mean, for years I'd worked on myself, including journey work, so including the current modality that I work. And I was driving in my car and something tweaked me, and I got in a real state, in a real strop. And I was bitching at myself internally, going, but after all this work, you're still not fixed, you're still not right, you're still in a mood. And I got spinning into this story of negativity. And I stopped and questioned myself. I went, what are you doing here, Billett? And I went, well, I'm telling myself a story about the mood I'm in. I went, okay, talking to myself. I said, do you think it might be a good idea just to pull the car over for a moment and to inquire as to what's going on here? And I went, okay, pulled the car over, sat there. I was just in a strop, just in a real funk. And I went, okay, so after all these years of personal growth work, of realization work, of healing work, has anything shifted? Really, what's the truth here? And I went, okay, yeah, there is a difference. And then the question comes up inside, so what's that difference? And I went, okay, so if I tell the truth here, the context in which this drop, this mood is taking place is freedom. Mm-hmm. It's taking place in open awareness, in consciousness. There is a choice to tell that truth, or there is the choice to get off on the mind talk about the mood that's being created here. So what do you choose? Mm. Okay, busted. Mm-hmm. And that stuck with me since that time, because of course, I mean, we all get tripped up. We all get locked into some story or into some mood. But if you realize what that mood is taking place in, it is massively freeing.
Yeah, I heard perspective and observation there is really, instead of being in it, being able to step back, elevate, and say, this is the story, this is what's playing out, versus being in the rage and in the strup, as you said.
I would describe it more as the experience of falling into it rather than stepping out of it.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
It wasn't like an elevated position. It was more, okay, if I let go, what's the deepest truth that's, and then, wow, okay, something organic is arising and revealing itself as the context in which life is taking place. So like this.
Wow. Thank you. And this one stumps my guests usually. So you get it right away, or it takes you a little time, and either way is totally okay. But if you could describe yourself in just one statement, what would that be?
I'm an ordinary guy who's had extraordinary experiences in life, and it's my privilege to be able to share the wisdom of those experiences with other people.
Beautiful. Beautiful. Well, Kevin, I feel like that's a perfect ending to our live time today. And
I enjoyed it.
I did too. I love hearing about your journey, pun intended, your book, Light in the Heart of Darkness. It's free on kevinbillett.org. I will also drop a link to the Journey Intensive at the end of the comment here that's launching this weekend. And North American time zone should work for many of our audience members. So feel free to check that out. And I'll see you on the other side. And the audience, thank you for joining us today.
Thank you, Shannon.
Thanks, Kevin. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.